What is up? It is the Figure Hunter, and this is the full and final review for the brand new Suunto race. Holy cow, there is so much information to take in, or so many thoughts and feelings about this watch because I have strong feelings on both sides. So, what we're going to do is we're going to break it down by pros and cons. We're going to go old school, and I'm going to break each of those categories down by mega pros. These are really like differentiators in the marketplace today. And then the kind of pro. These are just kind of cool at how they approach a couple things. Then we're going to talk about the kind of cons. Not that big a deal to me. Didn't really cause that much. And then we're going to talk about the mega cons. And we go from all sides of the spectrum, from the mega pro to the mega con with the Suunto race. So if you like this review, please give it a thumbs up. Please consider subscribing for more. I've got the Polar Vantage V3 and testing now. If you're new to this channel, I try to test things for higher intensity training. I really try to make sure to look at the wellness and the recovery as well as the training and the training recommendations. I try to not just announce a feature, but try to compare it head to head with others on the market that are offering that same feature or doing it better or worse. And then I have to focus my time on content, so my videos don't have any fancy editing or background music, things like that. So getting into the Suunto race. I mean, I will say this probably 1,400 times in the time that we watched this. You watch this video. It is definitely for $450. It is my favorite designed look, feel, watch I've ever tested. And there are some mega pros alongside it, but there are some real difficult issues. So this particular review is not a laundry list of everything it can do. Actually, I did an initial review where I just announced the features it is announcing, and then in that review said I had to actually dive in to see if those features were worth anything. So if you want to watch the initial review, the full feature set and full set of specs and all that stuff, it's in the description below as long as timestamps. So what we're going to do in this is just talk about what worked and what didn't work, what kind of worked, what kind of didn't work, but really what really worked, what really didn't work. So let's dive into the pros first, the mega pros, and then the kind of pros. So looking at the mega pros, the first is definitely the design, look, and feel. The buttons, everything about like this literal hardware. I mean, the addition of this over the vertical, the fact that it doesn't have this on the vertical, is a major, major improvement. I mean, this, you can long press it, you can do all sorts of things, and it is just functionally so helpful with the mapping. It is just absolutely fundamental. So buttons, the screen, obviously 1.43 inch AMOLED screen, and it's been big and beautiful and great the whole entire time. Even the band is, if I was to design a band, this would be it. It's stretchy. It's got the openings so it feels flexible. I think it looks sharp. It looks sporty, and it snaps onto itself the way, every band in the whole world should be made to do. But just the overall design, it just feels sturdy and solid. I mean, this is the stainless steel, and they use a lot of steel in it, so it's going to have a little bit of a overall weight to it. But I just feel like these accent points, everything about this is just fantastic, on top of the fact that it's got a sapphire glass. So it's sapphire glass, which is, a high quality glass. It's not going to scratch very easily. So everything about the hardware, all of it, including the AMOLED screen, super, super top notch. Additionally, behind it is the battery life for this super bright screen. It's saying, like 12 days with wrist gesture on. I'm getting like 9 days, over 9 days with always on display. And that's just, the widgets are, the notifications pop up automatically, which illuminates the watch. So all of these things happen. And so it is burning the battery, but it is just fantastic. So just kudos all around there. And then on top of it, other reviewers that do more running and biking and all sorts of things like that are noting that the GPS tracks are super high accuracy. So the GPS is high accuracy. On top of the GPS, battery life is phenomenal and through the roof. And then on top of all this, for this is just an overall watch, and just the beauty is the fact that it is only $450. $450 for this is just crazy. If you were to compare it, so, here it is compared to the, Epix Pro 51 millimeter. That's a $1,100 watch. And if you were to compare it to the 47 millimeter, if you went to the stainless, so stainless to stainless, it'd be 900 versus 450. So literally twice the price. And then this is the Polar Vantage V3, which is $600, aluminum casing. It's got a sort of a sleek feel to it, and maybe beauty's in the eye of the beholder. I don't like that it's got a domed glass, and there's a lot of glitches that have been reported, and I'm just starting my testing on it. But overall, this $450, and you're looking at it head to head compared to a $900 watch and a $600 watch that doesn't even work as well. Man, that's some fantastic pricing. What that is right there. The other thing about it is just the training functionality. So we're going to look at it on the app primarily, but I really do like how they calculate and assess your training load. I feel like this is another Mega Pro. So calculating your fitness level, your chronic training load, which is basically how much rigor of a workout you can handle, calculating your overall training stress score and your load over time, like how much load you've been under over the course of a number of days. You can see your load, not your time. It's not how much time you spent, but your load overall. You can see it relative to where you're going to pushing your fitness higher. And you can see even in simple numbers, my acute training load, my 7 days, is higher than my chronic training load. And it's giving me a negative TSB, which is negative training stress, that is showing it. This is the amount of time long, showing it to be I'm in the negative, which means I'm pushing my fitness higher. So, it just does a great job on the watch showing all these training features. That is a Mega Pro showing the training features. And then let's look at the app to see the last Mega Pro, which is how it shows you the coaching coupled with the training features. Let's look at the app. All right, so we'll look at the ugly one first. So if you go into this productive training, it shows you this big graph and it summarizes it. It actually is a useful graph. It's always counterintuitive that the more on the bottom chart, in the bottom chart, in the form chart, the more negative you are, the more you're pushing your fitness higher. But that's not the coup de grace. If you look in the middle bottom, you'll see a little graph picture. And if you go to the overview, it takes all these pieces in and gives you like a ton of coaching for both your training, your recovery, and your progress. It does take into account your recovery pieces. So your training, this is your training stress score. So this is not a volume of time. This is your training load laid out across days, which is fantastic. Your intensity zones, which is fantastic. Kind of the impact on strength, but your cardio and muscular impact. I haven't really dug into those to see how valuable they are, but the recovery, how it is giving you big, clear recommendations when it comes to your recovery. Your form is your how much your current training is pushing your baseline of capability forward. The negatives is positive, so all that's great. Progress, fitness change. You see the positive. I'm ramping up, but I have a positive score. Really, really, really awesome coaching and summary overall. You can see the summary. I'm sorry, the training summary. Nope, sorry, the progress summary, just like we saw in the ugly version. The training, I haven't tracked any of these things, but it does break down your training log. But in simple terms, this overview tab has a lot of quality information. The other major pro is that it tracks heart rate variability. So your nightly heart rate variability. We are going to talk about this in the cons section for a couple of specific reasons. But it tracks your heart rate variability, and it really lays it out in a very simple way. It ties it into recommendations, both, like we would be able to see it if we looked at the overview tab because it ties it into your overall recovery. But there aren't many watches that take the nightly average and culminate it into directionable information and show you these averages. It takes 14 days, and it even supposed to get better over time. I've been testing this watch for 3 weeks, and it, maybe gets a little bit better, but it takes 14 days to be able to give you this direction, but it gives you this direction. This is not a stat that's available on a lot of watches. So this heart rate variability is a major pro. And we'll talk about some concerns with it in the context. So that's the last Mega Pro. Let's begin to talk about the kind of pros. All right, so now we have an odd one. we have a kind of pro, kind of con. And it's one that's important to me and is significant for my sort of physiological wellness tracking, and that's resources. At different times, it's felt totally not as reliable as the Garmin body battery. So it used to be that resources was the same algorithm, same calculation as the Garmin body battery. First Beat designed it, although Garmin, they bought First Beat and I think they enhanced it like 4 times over. But the resources is kind of a pro, but kind of not as trustworthy and a little bit uncertain as it would nearly be with the Garmin body battery. And we're going to do a little bit of a deep dive, so I apologize because resources is actually a big deal and it takes some looking into to figure it out. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to first look at the Pro. If you look at the charts side by side a little bit, like at the Garmin app and then at the Suunto app for a day in the life of the resources flow versus the body battery flow. And then we're going to look at a major chart on what the wake up resources to start each day or the wake up body battery to start each day in my 16 days of tracking. So with that, let's dive into this unique one because this one's a kind of pro and a kind of con that I'm throwing in this section. All right, so we're going to look at these sort of side by side as much as we can. Here is the chart for the resources, and it does not have a lot of deep dive data. You really can't see a whole lot, but that's what the chart looks like for today versus the body battery. Now, it's starting out at a much lower reserve, and we'll see that unfold in a second. So you can see like the differences there, but it looks kind of the same, but it is just different at the same time. So we go into another day for resources. Here was yesterday, and we compare that to yesterday's flow. Well, yesterday looks very different. So here it's like a straight decline when it comes to yesterday on the race versus kind of a relaxed day and increase. So not the same. And then we go into another day where you can see, I think this is where there's a little bit, no, it's not spotty here. So here, Tuesday, we take it towards Tuesday here, and you see more of a straight decline. There's a little bit of a pocket where it's sort of calm and a little bit of a pocket where it rises on the resources on Suunto, but it's just not the same. And Garmin has got like 14 different physiological metrics at the same time. It's assessing your body battery. Here's a little bit, that's a little broken up of a day, so we can't take that. So Sunday the 5th, so we'll go to Sunday the 5th and see how it looks. So here is sort of flat, lots of rest, recovery, and you can see that it is actually sort of similar between the two, looking at them side by side. So it looks like, okay, well, maybe it is reliable on that day. Here, not a lot, some sort of gap, I guess. I was charging the watch and it just didn't have it. So you see the graph looks somewhat the same up to that same fallout point where I did a hard workout, and then this one just sort of died off. I think maybe it's when the watch technically died. Let's see if we can get one more day just to look at this. Okay, one more day, Friday the 3rd, leveled off and actually went up a little bit. Here, Friday the 3rd, leveled off and went up more. So it's similar to the impact that is occurring. It's just, yeah, it looks pretty good. So now let's look at a chart at the wake up resources or wake up body battery level for each of the devices. And this is where I start to have mixed feelings again. It's like, oh my God, how many different things like in the race make me feel good and then make me feel uncertain. So this is the wake up ready to start the day. Number one, it's at a totally different level. It's just a lot higher with Suunto. Number two, it's not moving as much as Garmin's. And so Garmin is, is crediting less sleep or having you more depleted at the end of every day. So even the same percentage increase brings you to a lower peak. But you can see there's just a lot more variance. It does kind of, when you step back, you follow like a trend line in your head. It looks sort of the same, but it's just not at all providing like the same body battery experience. It's just doing like body battery very light. So at the end of the day, what would I say? I'd say it's like a kind of pro, but a little uncertainty to it because it's like body battery light. Therefore, it's a kind of pro. Okay, so looking at the kind of pros, this is a minor thing, but just the font and design of the sort of the layout of the user interface and the fonts they use, I actually really enjoy. I think everything across the board. So like even if you were to go, and this will jump you into your last workout, the top button. Even if you were to go into the workout and you say, okay, I'm going to start it. I just love the way it looks. You can press the button and change your, type of information you're getting. But I love just the overall look and feel of the workouts themselves. Additionally, I do like that you can count your, oh Lord, sorry, that's loud. You can count your lap times, which is basically like a function of counting your time per round. So you can see your lap time currently versus the overall time. So you can sort of see how you're doing on your pacing, if that was something, especially with CrossFit, that you're trying to accomplish. We're going to discard that. So really the overall font and design, the look of the interface. One of the things that is kind of a small point, but it is kind of a, now that I've started to test the Polar Vantage V3, just the fact that everything works in simple form, like it all just sort of works. Like you click here, you have your control panel. There is a lag. We'll talk about that in the minor cons. But it just all works, like I like how it's all laid out. I like the functionality of the watch overall. It has a morning report, which we're not going to be able to see now. I didn't record a video of it, but it gives you a summary of your last night's sleep. That's a minor pro. That's kind of, it's got pro side feature to it. And then if you scroll down, I think it's a minor pro. It's not a major pro to me, because I don't do a lot of outdoor activities. And I also know that it's kind of limited in the outdoor activities it can do, is the map. I do love the way it looks. I think the map, the way it appears, is great. We're going to talk, like a slight negative later on. I'll just sell it now because I don't want to come back here. But the furthest out you can zoom is 500.5 miles. It's increasing though. That will increase apparently on Monday with a firmware update. But I just think it's not as capable of a real map as other device manufacturers, but it really is kind of cool at the same time. It is nice that it has it in there. I like the fact that within these sports, you can adjust the sports settings. You can change, even when you go into an activity, you can adjust like multiple settings when it comes down below. That's a kind of pro. That's like not the biggest thing in the whole wide world, but it does have way more setting adjustments you can do versus other watches on the market. I like the workout details after. So if we were to scroll down to the logbook and see like what the evaluation looks like when you go through a workout, what it looks like after the workout. It's just got a simple format, but I like the big simple colors. I like that you can see the intensity zones. You get all these really great features and really great analytics, which flows into those training. And then the last minor point that I would say is when it comes to sleep, I don't know if it's going to actually have it on here. You can't see it in this stupid week because I haven't taken a nap. But if you actually take a nap, it puts it on top of one of these night sleeps. So if I took a nap on Monday, it would add it to the top and it would count it in how much sleep I got for that day. The fact that it's adding sleep to your overall sleep volume, which will show your trends in general, I really like that that's how it's handling naps. So those are the kind of pros. All right, so looking at the pros, I mean, oh, this is my favorite looking watch of all time. I love the way it feels. I love the way it looks. 49 millimeters is great. The feature set of sapphire glass, the price, the battery life, I feel like is just incredibly awesome. And just, I love the overall font. Some of those little nuanced things I really think are great. So what are the cons? So we're going to start with the kind of cons, and not that big a deal, but sort of a con. And then we're going to go into the mega cons and talk about it all in summary. All right, so looking at the pros, I mean, oh, this is my favorite looking watch of all time. I love the way it feels. I love the way it looks. 49 millimeters is great. The feature set of sapphire glass, the price, the battery life, I feel like is just incredibly awesome. And just, I love the overall font. Some of those little nuanced things I really think are great. So what are the cons? So we're going to start with the kind of cons, and not that big a deal, but sort of a con. And then we're going to go into the mega cons and talk about it all in summary after. All right, so what are the cons? We're going to start with the small cons. A small con is, as you see me moving around, is this lag. There's a lag when you do a wrist raise to get full illumination. apparently there's going to be a firmware update that's going to fix both that as well as the zoom level for the mapping on Monday. So there's a lag when you're going to functionally move around. So as you saw that, if I push the button too many times, like, it takes a second to appear and I go back and it takes a second for the things around it to appear. I don't really care about that. That doesn't bother me. Like I test so many devices that I'm used to there being a slight lag, and it is not so severe that it's a big problem. The mapping zoom, like I said, is supposed to be fixed as well to at least 4 times the 0.5 miles. So I guess that would be 2 miles out. But 2 kilometers is what I actually technically heard is going to be the update. So those are some minor things. The lag. The other thing that I think is silly is the fact that when you have this beautiful big watch, you really don't have a lot of watch faces like this. That's the watch face that came out with the vertical. Every other watch face came out in like 1945. So like these have been out for a long time. And side note, back to one of the kind of pros is I really like their font. I like their font is sort of long upside, that way. Normally, like most of their fonts are like this. But this is all the watch faces. This is absurd, and they can change that. But then again, they released the vertical, 6 months ago, and they haven't had anything to that either. So this is the new one, with the race, and it does have the pro aspect of this one watch face will allow you to toggle through wellness metrics as well as training metrics, which I like. That's actually nice. But the watch faces are super limited. Another, you know, minor point is if you go in and you have connected it to a paired chest strap, and we'll talk about that in a second why that's crucial. Your paired devices, look, which paired device? I have 14 heart rate sensors. I'm wearing at typical times 3 heart rate sensors. Even the Whoop could be considered a heart rate sensor. What's it called? What heart rate sensor? What is this? I've had to disconnect everything around me to make sure I was connected to the right one because I'm testing 3 at the same time. That's my own problem, but I mean, the Polar Vantage V3 has got major glitches, but it'll list the entire name of which device you're trying to pair to. So there you have it. It doesn't list the full sensor name. Ridiculous. And then when you do go in, and this is another sort of gripe. So let's say you go in here and you're wanting to adjust the data fields. So the data fields that we saw before, there's a lot of options. Okay, so we'll just start it, and so you can see it. There's a lot of options for what you could adjust these data fields to be, each of these, but you're only allowed 3 data fields for the non-primary workout components. So like not running or biking or walking or something or hiking, but you're only allowed 3 data pages. And you could put all sorts of cool information on there, but you only had 3, and how you update it is sort of problematic. It's just not great. So lots of that there just should be a lot more. Should be able to add 12. If I wanted to scroll through 12 different types of data, I should be able to do that, but you can't do that. And the last minor con we'll look at on the app. All right, so here we are on the app. I have this workout recorded twice. So if you have the big pretty picture, that's actually a kind of pro to me, a minor pro, depending on what workout you choose. Like I always do cross training, it's like CrossFit. It has a cool picture of the gym. And then this one here is just recorded from a chest strap directly linked to the Sports Tracker app on my phone. So if you go into the Sports Tracker app, this is with the chest strap. You see big pretty colors across the heart rate graph because it correctly identified my heart rate zones, and it broke it into each heart rate zone according to how it should be based on my heart rate zones that I programmed in. And then here you go to the same features. It doesn't look like this when you first download it or first update it. It literally won't look like this pretty colors until like an hour or so later, and I don't understand that. It's a minor glitch, and I don't even think anybody would ever notice it. But when you first get in here to look at your stats, it's going to have, like for me, if you look at the heart rate zones down in the bottom, it's got like 95% in the blue zone. And then 1 minute in each of the other zones, because it has some erroneous process where it is analyzing the data. Either way, it works itself out, but that's a minor. All right, so now the major cons. And The major con for this watch exists on the back. Let's look at the results. As I already did a full in-depth analysis and review, let's look at the results of how inaccurate the heart rate sensor has been. All right, so the first heart rate graph, this is actually a steady state, easy sort of run, and it's not great. But then you get into like higher intensities where it just completely misses the boat, just like does not pick up the higher intensity portions and really has major failure points. Like some of the worst that I've unfortunately tested. I mean, if you look at this, it missed all the major lifting and then missed all of the intense stuff. Didn't really get over 120 beats a minute. That's really, really, really bad. So when you culminate it all together, you see that the accuracy, if a correlation to a chest strap 1-for-1 would be a diagonal line up the middle, the correlation value of 0.71 is one of the lowest in the spectrum of today's current watches. So very inaccurate. You have to pair it to a chest strap or a heart rate monitor armband in order to have any trustworthy feedback from the training. And with that inaccuracy, you have to have a chest strap. You have to pair it to a chest strap or an armband, some sort of external monitor to have any accuracy. Because when you go into these training features, if you don't have accurate information, you can't possibly get accurate recommendations. So you have to give it accurate heart rate in order to get accurate training recommendations. So that is like fundamental, and it can't provide it with the watch by itself, which is super tragic. It's not fixable. You can fix this by connecting to an external chest strap. But the other slight, and this is I would say it's a middle of the road con. It's uncertain con. Is does the heart rate accuracy affect the HRV calculation? Does it affect the accuracy of the HRV in your night sleep? I don't think so. So what we're going to do is I did a deep dive on the comparison, and I'd love that it shows this normal range. I mean, it does a great job of all this stuff. But I'm going to show you some graphs. We're going to look at the graphs of the recovery compared to Garmin, the graphs of the HRV, like the value from the Garmin to the value of the race, and then I'll even throw in Whoop. So let's look at some graphs. All right, so here you have it across like 14 nights, or I don't know, a long period of time, 16 nights. I just did a lot of tracking for this. So you can see how it compares. And in the beginning, it was way off. But in the last week, it has been in the same, you can see it looks like an overlap of one another. Slight variation, but an overlap. So what does this make me feel? This makes me feel a little bit mixed. We see in the first 8 days, it is very different from the nightly average for the HRV for the Garmin versus the Suunto race. But in the last 8 days, it's been relatively in line, even if it's a different, like direct different number. So what do I feel about that? I don't know. It looks like it's relatively trustworthy from this. So now we add in the Whoop. And what does the Whoop look like? The Whoop is based on overweighting a different segment of the night's HRV, and they don't give a lot of clarity in that calculation. But at least if you're taking the empirical data, like the flat out number they give you in the morning, and it would be used for tracking averages, you can see that it follows the basic flow, that all of the devices are following the flow of my heart rate variability. And so it does seem like the heart rate sensor is not significantly affecting the value of the data out, unless you look at the first 8 days. And what in the world do we do with that? But in general, I feel like it's pretty trustworthy. I feel kind of good about it. So take that for what it's worth. Is the heart rate sensor, which we know is you have to have an external heart rate monitor to be able to track accurate training, is the heart rate sensor affecting the wellness data? It's a little bit uncertain. I say probably not, and that's the best I can say. So what, in summary, now you've seen the mega pros, the kind of pros, the kind of cons, and the mega cons. Oh my gosh, it is like, what the hell do I do with this watch? It is like a total competitor from like the functionality and feel, and then totally falls short in some of the basic components, which makes me question and wonder about other sort of analytical information it provides. I absolutely want to love it. I want to wear this as my daily driver. I mean, I look at the competition. We'll talk about the competition in a second, but I just love so much about this watch, but it is really not one I think I could probably wear on a daily basis, because you are absolutely tied to a chest strap. You're absolutely tied to an armband. And I take this from somebody who is tied to a heart rate monitor all the time, absolutely all the time. But there's those once in a while things where I'll just do like a body weight workout in a small home gym, or I'll go for a run and I just won't have my devices, or I'll be out and doing something I want to, and you just can't trust the information because you didn't have your armband or your chest strap along with you. So that is a big major rub in 2023 for devices on the market to hit that low, that inaccurate, because 90% of the devices are not hitting that inaccurate. And it does make me sort of wonder about the quality of the stats otherwise. But to do a total devil's advocate, if you do wear a chest strap and you're getting like a feature-rich watch that you can't compete with for $450, now do the resources compete with Garmin's body battery? Definitely not. You are not going to get, and let me say this clearly in my summary, you are not going to get the same physiological wellness evaluation from the Suunto Race as you would get from the Garmin 265 at $450. It's going to have a plastic case, not going to feel all nice. It's going to have a smaller screen, not going to feel as, polished there or whatever, but it is going to provide to you a quality set of core, trustworthy, bedrock wellness physiological metrics. But with the heart rate sensor attached to this, you can't compete with the quality of all the other stuff it provides just on the looks, feel, strength, battery life, beautiful screen, well-featured, training load in the app, and the way it gives you recommendations on things. It does the recommendations from a coaching standpoint on your training better than Garmin does. And Garmin is kind of the industry leader in everything. So take both sides of the coin for what it's worth for you. That's for you to decide. So how does it compare to the competition? Obviously, like the 965 is $600, but the 965 is going to definitely beat it on all the training, like trustworthy nature things, and then definitely on all the wellness physiological aspects. It's going to lose on the casing and design and feel. It's got a domed cover. Nobody wants that. Battery life obviously is going to compete head to head on, but it to me is not going to compete on just the overall quality of like the build of the watch. The 265 is going to compete relatively well, but it feels like a lighter plastic watch. It's just sort of like the reality, but it's going to be much more trustworthy in a million other different ways, more baseline components. It's definitely going to crush the Polar Vantage V3. Not a competition there. Polar's got some kinks to work out. It's definitely going to crush any of the Coros line, because Coros does not offer wellness. They just do not offer any kind of wellness recommendations. They have sleep, but they just don't offer wellness recommendations. So Coros is not a competition. The Apple Watch is in a whole different, that's in a smartwatch category. It's not a competition for sports and training watches, because it does not come with sports and training analytics and wellness analytics providing guidance and advice. It doesn't come with that stuff out of the box. So it does not provide those things. So this Apple Watch doesn't compete unless you want to control your TV, and then you just go wear an Apple Watch and figure out your training some other way. So that's where it fits. I don't have a clear-cut recommendation because I myself am still torn. I really want to find a way to get a discounted titanium version of this for $550 for the titanium version. If I can get it on a discount, then if it's $500, that's just hard. It's all hard. It's all difficult. So with that, that is the full and not so clear, wrestle down the multiple of issues final review for the Suunto Race. It's the Fit Gear Hunter. Thanks so much for watching.